He forged a hospital seal and scammed $30,000. After being arrested, he still brazenly told reporters, "If you don't have money, what do you expect me to do? I can't afford to keep a dead person alive. And I can't just strangle her either." Before the judge could even finish speaking, the man completely gave up and lashed out. However, once his story was made public, it sparked an outpouring of sympathy from thousands of people. What heartbreaking truth was hidden behind it all? And how did the court eventually rule? The man, Liao Dan, was a worker at an internal combustion engine factory in Beijing. His parents divorced when he was young, so he was raised by his grandparents. In 1997, he was introduced to a young woman named Du Jinling. Although Liao Dan didn't make much money and looked pretty ordinary, Du Jinling saw his honesty and kindness as a treasure. Within less than a year of meeting, they got married. Soon after, they welcomed a lovely baby boy. They thought life would only get better from there. But when their son turned 1, both Liao Dan and Du Jinling lost their jobs as their factories shut down. The family of 3 had no choice but to rely on social welfare to survive. Since Liao Dan had no big ambitions, his wife suggested he stay home to look after their child and elderly relatives. From that point on, Du Jinling shouldered the entire burden of supporting the family. She worked at a thermos bottle factory, then later gave massages at a beauty salon. To earn a little more money, Du Jinling would leave early every morning and take extra shifts on weekends. Thanks to her hard work and determination, the couple managed to save a little bit, and life gradually became more comfortable. However, the long-term exhaustion took a toll. In 2007, Du Jinling started experiencing swelling. At first, she thought it was just a minor issue, but hospital tests revealed she had developed uremia. The diagnosis hit her like a bolt of lightning. This illness was extremely hard to cure and basically required endless spending to stay alive. Just the cost of dialysis treatments alone was at least $700 a month. After Du Jinling fell ill, the family's only income came from their $260 welfare payment, which was nowhere near enough to cover the huge medical expenses. Initially, her condition could have been covered by health insurance, but her household registration was still in rural Hebei, making her ineligible for Beijing's resident health insurance program. The couple considered returning to Hebei to enroll in the rural health system. But with Du Jinling needing dialysis 3 times a week, they simply had no time or energy to manage the move. Even though Du Jinling had worked at the beauty salon, her boss never purchased employee insurance for her. Later, the authorities in Liao Dan's hometown learned of their situation and helped Du Jinling apply for a serious illness assistance program for extremely poor individuals. This way, half of her medical costs could be reimbursed. However, every time Liao Dan submitted receipts for reimbursement, it would take at least 3 months to receive any money. Seeing this exhausting situation, many relatives and friends advised Liao Dan and Du Jinling to give up. But Liao Dan stubbornly refused to bow to fate. He said, "We go through thick and thin together, you understand? I'm just doing it out of gratitude. Out of pure gratitude. Back when I lost my job and had no work, she gave me a child and worked hard to support both of us. After all these years, now that she's sick, if I don't take care of her, is that right? Am I even human then?" Later, Liao Dan tried every possible way to raise money. First, he bought a used motorcycle to take his wife to the hospital. And in his spare time, he ferried passengers around the streets to earn a few extra bucks. But even after a whole day of exhausting work, he could only make a few dollars. After that, Liao Dan went on to apply for a bunch of credit cards and maxed them out. When the bank started chasing him for debts, this proud Beijing man had no choice but to borrow money from relatives and friends. But after a while, everyone was worn out by his borrowing. His friends bluntly told him, "My money doesn't grow on trees. If I give you another $1,400 today, my own family won't have food to eat or tuition for the kids. We might need it any day now." Everyone understood that Du Jinling's illness was a bottomless pit. They had families of their own to take care of, and couldn't keep burning money for someone else indefinitely. To make matters worse for Liao Dan, the second-hand motorcycle he used to support the family was stolen, and he himself was diagnosed with diabetes. Desperate, Liao Dan turned to diabetic neighbors, hoping they could share some of their medication with him. Just when he had hit rock bottom, an unexpected discovery changed his fate. One day, he went to pay for his wife's dialysis as usual. But the staff at the payment window forgot to stamp the receipt. When Liao Dan took the unstamped slip to the dialysis room, something odd happened. The staff only checked if there was a stamp, and the payment system wasn't connected to the dialysis room's records. That comment suddenly lit a spark in Liao Dan's mind. With their savings drained and no one willing to lend them more money, he decided to take a risk. Through a street ad, he contacted someone who made him a counterfeit hospital payment stamp. Although Liao Dan had always been an honest, rule-abiding man, the idea of committing fraud left him anxious and sleepless for days. It wasn't until his wife needed another dialysis session that he finally stamped the fake seal onto the payment slip. To his amazement, no one noticed. From then on, every time he paid, he pulled the same trick. Over the years, the hospital updated their stamps several times, switching between circular and oval shapes. But Liao Dan was sharp and adapted quickly, updating his counterfeit stamps to match. Before, Du Jinling constantly had to borrow money for treatments. Now, she could continue her care without a hitch. She couldn't figure out how it was possible. Whenever she asked where the money was coming from, Liao Dan would get irritated and snap. "Don't worry about it. Just focus on your treatment. I'll handle the rest." And just like that, Liao Dan used fake stamps to deceive the hospital, year after year. Thanks to him, his wife lived several more years. However, when the hospital system was upgraded and connected online, everything unraveled in September 2011. The hospital called the police, and an investigation began. Even though the case was exposed, the police still insisted on continuing Du Jinling's dialysis during the investigation. In February 2012, Liao Dan was arrested in the dialysis room. When the police went to his home to gather evidence, they were stunned by the sight of poverty and desperation. The house was piled high with plastic bottles, cardboard, and, most of all, empty medicine boxes. Seeing this, one of the officers said with a heavy heart, "Don't blame us, brother. We have to take you in today." Liao Dan understood and quietly cooperated. Before he left, he handed the last $15 he had to his wife and child. It might have been the last thing he could ever do for them. It was only at this moment that Du Jinling realized that for the past 4 years, the reason she was still alive was because her husband had been secretly holding everything together. After being detained for 14 days, Liao Dan was released on bail while awaiting trial, due to his need to care for his wife. On July 11, 2012, the first trial for Liao Dan's case of defrauding the hospital out of $30,000 began. He pled guilty to all charges. When the judge asked, "Why did you change the dialysis from 3 times a week to 2? He answered honestly, "No money. What do you want me to do? I couldn't just let her die, and I couldn't kill her myself." Liao Dan's story quickly sparked a massive wave of sympathy online. Within just 2 days, donations poured in. Someone donated $5,000. And one kind-hearted person donated $30,000 to help Liao Dan repay the hospital. With these donations, just 4 days after the court session, Liao Dan was able to pay back all the stolen funds. At the same time, 2 organizations also promised to cover all of Du Jinling's future dialysis costs. On Weibo, many netizens donated, quickly raising another $70,000. In the end, Liao Dan was sentenced to 3 years in prison, suspended for 4 years. As long as he stayed out of trouble for those 4 years, he wouldn't have to serve time. But fate was still cruel to the couple. In 2016, just as Liao Dan was about to finish his probation, and Du Jinling was about to finally get her long-awaited Beijing residency, she passed away from a heart attack triggered by her kidney failure. Liao Dan wanted to find a resting place for his wife's ashes. But with cemetery plots in Beijing costing around $1,400 per square meter, it was far beyond what he could afford. Du Jinling had come to Beijing from Hebei at 18 to chase her dreams. Here she married, had a child, and worked tirelessly. After living over 20 years in Beijing, she was ultimately taken back to her hometown in Hebei. And for Liao Dan, a Beijing native born and raised, he too felt that he no longer belonged to this city. Every time he looked at those towering skyscrapers, he felt like an outsider. In the past, Liao Dan used to miss the Beijing of his childhood. Now, he had someone else to miss, his wife.